here to help you with breeze. Planting seeds and teaching skills. Teachers turn schoolyards to dreams. Who hates school gardens with ease?
Hello and welcome to School Gardens with Ease podcast. I'm your host, Leila Skandari, and this is episode number 25. I hope my scratchy voice doesn't bother you too much. My throat is captive by COVID, but I wanted to show up today because despite the scratchy voice and I had to put on a thick face, my thickest face on, I'll make sure that I edit all the, throat clears and coughs and things like that so that we can make it because this topic is important and I want to reach out to you as soon as possible. This is the time of year that most of you start thinking about, school gardens. And for those of you who teach in warmer climates, you might have already started planning it. Your school probably started a month earlier than us, and your summer is, your winter is not that bad. So you're really seriously thinking about it. And I get it. No matter if you're a parent volunteer or a teacher listening to this, and no matter if you have already a garden or you're planning to have a new garden, I want you to pay very close attention to this episode because what I'm about to show you makes your life a lot easier. If you go to episodes numbers 4 and 5, which is all about summer maintenance, you'll see that one of the important things that helps a garden that has less summer maintenance, are these permaculture techniques that I keep talking about. And one of those permaculture techniques that is truly magical is this fancy sounding but super simple technique called Hugelkultur. 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 Don't let the name intimidate you, okay? It's a fancy name for a super simple concept. I think it's German and it translates to mound culture or hill culture. It's a technique that involves making a raised mini hill or mini ridge with a pile of dead wood. Essentially, it means that you pile dead wood and branches and twigs and logs and things like that and top it up with soil, and that would be your garden bed. Now, I know that sounds messy and unstable, but that's not the case at all. In fact, Hugelkultur garden beds are super stable, and as long as you lay the wood nicely and make sure that you cover it really well, so that no sticks are sticking out and showing and things like that, and you also make sure that the border of your garden is done properly. They're very neat and tidy and look really nice too. Most permaculture experts recommend tall piles, even as tall as 7 feet, for the most effect of these gardens. But obviously, that's not feasible for a school garden, especially one that's built by kids. And honestly, I've led classrooms build hugelkultur gardens that were 2 feet tall, and they worked like magic. And building these gardens are not only doable for grades 3 and up easily, but they are also super fun to build. And on top of the teamwork and collaboration that building such gardens takes and teaches kids, there's a tons of science with hugelkultur gardens that you teach them. Now, what's the science? What on earth do you want to create a mount of buried dead wood and call that your garden? So excited to tell you all about it. Hugelkultur gardens are first and foremost naturally water conserving because wood is a sponge and it absorbs all the water and it holds on to that water for as long as it can. So when your students water the garden during school year, when they're there, and when it rains in spring, mostly it rains a lot in spring, the soil gets wet and then the excess water gets absorbed by the wood underneath. And that wood holds on to that water for as long as the soil above and around it is wet. And as soon as the soil gets dry, that water is naturally released from the wood into the soil and keeps the soil moist. This means less watering is needed and less water will be wasted, more efficient garden, and it has less maintenance, obviously. So, if you get a hot and dry summer, and most of you in warmer climates do, and honestly, we do too every year in a while, and your summer volunteers are forgetful every other day, and half of them don't show up, for your garden is going to be fine. That means less worry for those responsible and passionate parent volunteers and no worries for the teachers who are on their summer vacation. Having a resilient garden is really priceless. It's so reassuring to know that you've set up your garden to get all the help that it needs from nature, and it doesn't need to, it doesn't need to be, supervised. You don't need to be on top of it all summer long. When I first built a Hugelkultur garden with a class, I knew the science behind it. And of course, I knew that, and that's why I did it. And I also had experience with it in my own backyard. But it's different when it's in your own backyard and you only leave for, I don't know, a 5-day vacation and half of those days rains, right? So that's the experience that I had with it. And even though I knew the science behind it, I wasn't 100% sure if it's really going to show up for me. So I wasn't completely worry free, to tell you the truth. So we set it up, and the volunteer schedule was set up, and we left for the summer. And we also set up the water chest. Now, if you don't know what I mean by the watering chest, it's my recommended setup for a hose system that makes it easy and efficient for all volunteers to water the garden in summer, and also for the students to water them during the school year. It makes things a lot easier. I have a guide on it that I will link in the show notes. So we set everything up and we left. I didn't even participate as a volunteer myself because this school was not in my neighborhood, and I was only a vendor who went to the school. And I truly believe that the community has to do it by themselves. And honestly, my summer got really, really busy with family anyway, so I had no choice but just let it be. But I did follow up with the main teacher the first week of back to school, and because I was dying to know what happened. And she sent me a few images of the garden, and oh my God, that garden flourished like magic. A little bit overgrown, which is what we get with school gardens, and the way we plant them densely, and also we leave them unattended intentionally throughout summer. But wow, that garden was lush, beautiful, filled with food and filled with seeds. So I asked her if she or any other teachers visited the garden during summer at all, and the answer was a resounding no. When I asked if she knew how did the volunteers do, she's like, I didn't hear from them. I don't know. But I'm sure that some of them showed up and some of them didn't, just like any other volunteer group. And that was not a wet summer, because we do sometimes get really wet summers here, and that was not one of them. In fact, that summer was a lot more on the drier side. This was amazing. Just unbelievable. Exactly what I was hoping for, knowing the science behind the Hugelkultur gardens, but still a very pleasant surprise. And the main reason I was so pleased about this was that I felt like I had cracked the code of summer maintenance, the code for low maintenance, resilient school gardens. So any other garden I ever built at the school after that was a Hugelkultur garden, unless it was a classroom garden, it wasn't outside, or it was a kaha planter garden. And I'll tell you all about kaha planter gardens in another episode because it deserves another episode. Now, water conservation is not the only benefit of Hugelkultur gardens. Long-term soil building is another benefit of these types of gardens. The wood or any other material that you hide or you bury under the soil or compost, it will compost and it will add to the biodiversity of your soil. So these gardens need no extra fertilizers of any kind and for years. The taller, the mount is, the longer the nutrition. The big 7-foot mounts that professional permaculturists build in bigger lands provide nutrients for 20 years or more. One of the reasons these school gardens flourish so well, on top of the efficient and consistent moisture that they receive, is nutrients. Another benefit of these gardens is season extension, because deep inside of the hugelkultur garden is a compost pile. And the core of a compost pile gets hot and it stays hot for a long time. And that means these gardens are warmer than the gardens next door, which means that your plants survive longer. Your fall, essentially in winter, your freeze comes later. So you have a garden for a longer time. If you teach in the warmer climate, that might not be what's important to you. But for those of us who teach in a colder climate, that 1 month or two of more having a garden is precious. That could mean harvesting all of that food that we grow last year for longer, all the way into November or early December, instead of having to wrap it up mid-October. Lots more opportunities to learn and play in the garden. Also, lots more opportunities to even grow cold crops in fall and, get another second round of harvest out of your garden. Huge difference. Another benefit of these gardens is that they are a great habitat for woodland wildlife such as snakes and toads, which are so exciting, as well as mushroom species and a whole big group of other native wildlife creatures. Because most probably you'll be using the wood that you find around you. If you could differentiate, try to use native wood. That would be such a cool lesson for the kids too, for your learners. If not, don't worry about it. Just keep it simple. Also, hugelkultur gardens are regenerative, natural water management systems. And if done right, they can store lots of water inside of them. Water that's otherwise going to be running off, be wasted, or create damage. I know that your educators' minds, is lighting up. The bulbs are going ding, 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 ding all over the place about all the science and the educational material that such a garden provides you. So yeah, the educational aspects of this are plenty and huge. So are long-term, environmental benefits of such gardens. But I want to bring your attention back to the immediate benefits, because I truly believe good things have to have an immediate benefit for humans, or we don't do them. And that's okay. And that's the way we are. And also, immediate benefits are the ones making your life easier. And that's totally what I want, what I stand for. Hence, the name of this entire podcast, or the name of anything that I put together. School gardens with ease. Ease is super important. The fact that these gardens are super low maintenance, resilient to drought, and also independently nutrient rich is what I want you to pay attention to. The fact that if you build a school garden with this, your chances of wowing success increases significantly is what I want you to remember. And I talk from experience. This is not theory. Seeing it happen. It's magical. By the way, I almost forgot a great benefit of these gardens is that they're raised without you having to, buy raised beds or have any physical man-made structure to keep the garden raised other than the garden itself. So, and you won't believe how well these gardens stay in place. At first, you might be thinking, oh, surely the soil is going to, slide off the wood and make a mess, and the shape of the garden is going to change and shift. And that's not going to happen, especially if your garden is not too tall. If you do it right, and make sure that you shake the soil well in between those branches every time that you top it up with your students, and this is going to be amazing. And it's going to stay amazingly well in place. Of course, these gardens don't stay raised forever because they decompose over time. So they eventually sink. But you can always add more wood and cover it with more soil, I don't know, like 5 years from now, and raise it again. I do have a guide on how to build hugelkultur gardens with a class of students that I will link in the show notes for you. And this technique is very present in my Oasis school program. The link to all the Oasis program series is also in the show notes. Go check them out. Now, I hope by now you're excited to give this a try. And if so, you are probably thinking logistics. Now, when it comes to the soil that you need for this, well, you can find soil, right? You know where to find it. Or if not, you can, always reach out to your garden center, soil suppliers. You'll figure it out. That's not a big deal. But what about the wood? Where are you going to get the wood? First of all, it's very important that you do not, I repeat, do not use chipped wood or also called mulch for hugelkultur beds. That's not gonna do well at all. It's not the same. The wood you use it has to be whole wood. You could even use big logs and stumps, if you have access to them, but no chipped wood. The whole wood is a better sponge. Wood that's chipped don't hold as much water. Also, you don't want something that's gonna compost all at once in the first 2 months of your garden. Especially in warmer climates, things compost pretty fast. And wood chips compost faster. Fast decomposition uses a lot of nutrients, which is going to be detrimental to your heavy feeders, annual heavy feeders such as your tomatoes and cucumbers, etc. Whole woods, please, and as whole as possible. Also, if you felt like being picky, hardwood is better than softwood. So your birch, your maple, your oak, apples, all of those are fantastic for a hugelkultur garden. Softwood could decompose way too fast. Some would even grow back because they don't die that easily. Remember, I said this has to be dead wood. Like, for example, if you bury willows, you haven't buried them, you actually have planted them. They're going to grow back, root deeply, and create an uncontrollable willow forest. Be careful with willows. And also be careful with black walnut, as it stunts the growth of not all, but many plants. So it's not worth the risk. So essentially, wood that's whole wood, it's not willow or black walnut, is totally okay. There are some wood that are super antifungal or antibacterial, and you want your garden to be filled with fungi in good bacteria. Those are rare, and I wouldn't worry too much about them. If you know them, try not to have your entire bed filled with them, okay? Otherwise, don't worry about it too much. Keep it simple. Now, where do you get the wood? Just go to the woods. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't have to be the Amazon forests, okay? Look around your school. Is there a non-maintained wooded area with fallen branches and twigs? I don't know, between your parking lot and the road. It can be as simple as that. It can be just a few trees and that would do it. Take your students on a nature walk. Make sure that you bring plenty of wagons and trolleys and things like that that you can transport the wood with, and then gather the fallen and dead and even rotting wood, bring it back, store it at your school, and then use it for your hugelkultur garden. You don't need a lot, and even a little goes a long, long way. I mean, even if you just lay one layer of branches and twigs, that doesn't even create a mound. It doesn't matter. Still, there's some wood in there, and some wood is better than no wood. It's way better than no wood, actually. If you are in the middle of a jungle of concrete and cement, and there is absolutely no unattended trees around you, make it an event. Make it a field trip. Go somewhere else. You can make it an educational field trip about the native trees in your area. How amazing and educational would that be? Can't do that? Ask parents to collect and bring wood for you. I've seen it done and I've seen it work. I know finding wood will not be too difficult. Sometimes you just have to get a little bit creative, and that's all. And creativity is what you do all day, every day with your eyes closed. What if you are not planning to build a brand new garden? What if you already have a garden, in raised beds or troughs or even in the ground, and you already have it and you want to replenish that garden? Can you use hugelkultur there? I mean, of course you can. In case of raised beds or troughs, you'll just have to go through one extra step of shoveling out the soil, then laying the wood in and shoveling the soil back in. That's all. The exact same science works in raised beds and troughs too. The wood acts like a sponge, absorbs the extra water, and releases it to the roots of your plants when they need it, when the soil is dry. Simple as that. Is it more work to create hugelkultur gardens than a normal conventional garden? Of course it is. But the extra work is not too much, first of all. It's fun for your learners. It's lots of learning about how nature works, how to collaborate and work with nature, all the science and all the eye-opening and mind-expanding concepts that you're going to be exploring and discussing. And most importantly, the result is a regenerative, not sustainable, not just sustainable, but regenerative garden that's resilient, long-lasting, low maintenance, and flourishing with ease. And I think, well, actually, I know that a little bit of work at the beginning is totally and unequivocally worth it. Go check out the links in the show notes. Get some wood and build some regenerative gardens. I'll talk to you next week in another episode.
You've listened to the entire episode, and for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and please share this episode with other teachers who might be interested in this topic. See you next week for a new episode.